everyone, and welcome to Let's Heal with Beth Jones. That's me, your host. My mission is to bring the power of healing to trauma and abuse survivors. That's why every guest on this show will bring you an amazing story of healing in action. So come on, everyone, let's heal. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Let's Heal with Beth Jones. I am very honored to have with me today a wonderful guest, Alexa Bigwarf. Hi there.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Would you like to introduce yourself, please, to the audience?
Yes, I should have asked you which direction you want me to go because I could I could introduce myself in so many ways. But I guess for the most important for this audience is that well, I'm a mom of three kids. I had one who passed away when she was 2 days old, so I actually have four. I'm an author. I'm a publishing consultant. I run multiple publishing houses, and I've been through a lot of stuff in the past few years. I'm a veteran. I have PTSD, and there's a lot to unpack if we wanted to go in there. But I love helping women share their stories and moving forward and having an impact on the world that helps them heal in the process, as writing helped me heal through my processes. And that's the nutshell.
Yes, that was wonderful, and we are going to explore all of that in our conversation. Yeah, so thank you very much for that, and thanks so much for being here today. I'm happy to have you.
Thank you.
So let's start with the past, really the reason that you needed to go on a healing journey, and then we'll talk about how you got to the healing journey and then what that has looked like for you onto what you do today. So in the past, the things that have really caused you to need to focus on healing, whatever you'd like to say about that, give us a little more flavor. You've talked a little bit about it, but give us a little more on that.
Absolutely. Well, I have always been a super independent person and done things my own way. So when I had an experience where I realized I couldn't get through it on my own, I turned to different outlets for healing. And the one that just rocked me to my core was when I had identical twin daughters, and they were very, very sick with a syndrome in utero called twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. They were born 9.5 weeks early. My daughter Catherine was the recipient, which meant she was receiving too much fluid, so her body was very, very, very bloated with fluids, and her heart wasn't functioning. Her lungs weren't properly developed because of all the fluid. And so she died 2 days after they were born. And our survivor was 1 pound, 10 ounces, mighty but fierce as they come.
Mm.
Little warrior. She's now 13 and doing very well. So we're really lucky that she doesn't have any long-term health impacts. And in that time frame, one of the things that I always thought was kind of cliche, but learned is absolutely not, was that men and women grieve differently.
Mm.
And my now ex-husband at the time, he didn't want to be sad. He didn't want to talk about her. I'm sure he was sad, but he did not want to outwardly grieve. He didn't want to talk with me about it. And so I started looking for places where I could talk to people who would help me. And I found some Facebook groups of for twin to twin transfusion families, but I also started blogging. And that's when I really, really realized I've always been a journaler. I've always, taken my emotions and put them in a notebook or something. But I created a whole persona. I started blogging under the name Cat Biggie because I was angry. I was sad. I didn't care if people knew it was me. Like, I shared my posts, but I didn't want people to
Mhm.
be able to look up Alexa Bigwarf and find some of these things. And I really started sharing my story, and I saw how it was impacting other people. And so it wound up being a two-pronged approach, because not only was writing the words helping me, but seeing that I wasn't feeling that I wasn't alone, and more importantly, seeing that my words were helping other people not be alone was magical. And that, so I'll stop there.
So thank you for sharing that. And may I just say, first of all, I am sorry about your loss. And I think about you and your ex-husband and what you must have gone through. But I also think about your daughter now with her missing twin. So I have twin cousins, and so I know that's a thing. When one of them leaves the world, the other one is sort of in a place of missing part of themselves. So my heart goes out to both of you, all three of you.
Thank you. And it's interesting because while she doesn't have any physical issues from being born so premature and so small, she definitely suffers emotionally and mentally, and has dealt with a lot of anxiety and other issues like that, that I often wonder if it has to do with
No.
how she came into this world.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe, and maybe at some point in time you'll get to explore that, or she'll get to explore that if she has to go on her own healing journey. But at least you know where to start, right? You know what the starting point was if she's in that place where she needs help at some point in time in the future.
Exactly.
The writing that you were doing. So I think many of us who go on a healing journey and need to get what I call fear-based emotions out of us do it through writing. And it's such a great place to do it because it's just you and the paper and you can say anything that you want to say, right? And I think that's incredibly courageous of you to be posting that. What I'm assuming must have been just raw emotion at the time that was coming out in your blog, and that is courageous, but I think also very healing for other people to see that, right? Because as you say, you begin to recognize and people recognize we're not alone, which is also super powerful in the healing journey.
Absolutely. Well, it was interesting because I did post some that were about my grief, but I wanted more than anything, Beth, at the time, I wanted people to remember her. and
Yes.
and so I think this is something that all grieving mothers go through, whether they were 4 weeks along when they had a miscarriage, all the way through, or maybe 6 weeks would be a better, but or a 32-year-old child. Like, we desire our children to be remembered, whether people had the opportunity to know them or not. And so I was telling a lot of her story to
Mm.
not lose her, but also I started sharing other people's stories, and I started sharing the experience of being in the NICU. And what I found out, I already knew it, but what I really found out was that in the United States, we are awful at dealing with grief, except for the Jewish community. They do grief beautifully. Uh,
Mm.
it's a year-long process, and there's all kinds of, anyway, that's a different podcast episode, right?
Oh, yeah,
But
absolutely.
but people are awful with grief, and knowing how to talk to someone, and a lot of people just straight up ignored me. And that was so when you lose, I felt so isolated. So I'm isolated from people that I wanted to hear from, but they were afraid to say anything because they were afraid they might hurt my feelings, or and I'm like, I'm thinking about her all the time. Trust me, you are not going to remind me of something I'm not already thinking about. But so it was a lot of just like, I wanted people to know, talk to, like, find out, like, not everybody wants to talk about their baby, but find out, ask the question. The worst thing that they can say is, I don't want to talk about that, but they may want. So I did a lot of things like words to say, things to do when a mother's lost a child, and trying to educate people too, based on the hurtful and harmful things that were said and done to me in people's. It took me a long time to get to the point where I wasn't angry and realizing they're lost. They don't know what to do. They weren't trying to be mean, And so that was important for me to write out things that would help other people help someone who's grieving. And so that it gave me so much purpose. And I think that's what life is, right? It's chasing purpose. And when we don't have purpose, we're miserable.
I agree with you. Purpose and love is
And
what
love.
life ultimately is all
Absolutely.
about, and that the purpose feeds the love for other people. right?
Yes,
I
exactly.
agree with you. Yeah. And I think those of us who go on that healing journey and come to that place of knowing what our purpose is as a result of it, that in and of itself is very healing because you understand why you lived through what you lived through, right? To pass on that lived experience to other people, a real account of what happens.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Yeah. So thank you for sharing all of that. So the writing, let's stay on the grief theme for a little bit. The writing on the grief. So that was a few years ago, more than 10 years ago now that you would have been doing all of that writing, but it's sort of a theme that stuck with you because you now have the journal that I have here that you've written for people.
Yes.
Yes, permission to thrive. So tell us about this and how this came to be.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna hold up my copy too.
There you go.
It's so beautiful. Like it makes me happy
It
just
is beautiful.
it is so, my designer did such an amazing job, and it just, I mean, you can't help but just feel happier holding it. But my, over the years, like, so first it started with the blog. Then, about when my daughter was about 18 months old, a friend, delivered her baby stillborn at 38 weeks. And
Mm.
so 18 months, I'm not in the fresh grief, but I'm still in the grief process. And a group of us, we were gathered together before the funeral, and I was just like, what can I do? I need something to do that I can help women like her. And at that point in time, my grief network had grown really large. And I decided one of the things that I did not have was a book that was really about the emotions that mothers are going through. When I was in the hospital and when I went through some grief stuff, like they offered up pamphlets and stuff written by psychologists and things about, like all this stuff. And I was like, okay, but I don't care about that stuff. I want to know what's on the other side. I want to know how people handle this. So I
Mhm.
pulled together over 30 mothers and some fathers too. There's a small section for fathers, but it's called Sunshine After the Storm, a survival guide for the grieving mother. And so that was wonderful. And I took that and I didn't want to sell it. I mean, it's for sale, but I wanted to give it to people. So that began my next purpose in life. I say, I can send you a copy of this book. I would send a copy of the book and I'd start putting in like socks and chocolates and tea and
Mm.
chapstick and things that were comforting to me. And so I was like, I'm spending a lot of money doing this. I want to continue doing this. So I started a nonprofit called Sunshine After the Storm, and we sent out packages at no charge. Like they could just come fill out the form. And I did a fundraiser every year that raised enough money to send out between 30 and 50 packages a year. I still have a long list of people that never got a package because life and money and all those things got in there. But that was part of my passion for a long time. And I ran a couple of healing retreats for grieving mothers, and all the while I was like, there's something else. I need to do something else. And I had gotten a journal at a work at a conference that I'd gone to, and it was not exactly like this, but it was similarly designed in the fact that each day you had, focus areas. So I thought about the things that had helped me. And the reason it took me so long to get here was because I had to heal enough to know what helped me get there, right? So I was like, what are the things that helped me heal the most? I went through a yoga program and really focused on breath work. I was doing some healing yoga. I was practicing gratitude. I was journaling. I was practicing self care. I was doing small things every day, like painting my nails. I'd never painted my nails. I was not a girly girl, but all of a sudden I wanted to wear bright, sparkly things and do things that made me feel better every day. So that's what I created, was a journal that has those sections, a place where you can journal on your gratitude, remember your breath work. There's journal pages. There's a self-care thing. There's checking in with yourself. It's making yourself do the things that will help you get better. And so I was like, I have to do this. So I invested a lot of time and energy and money. I wanted it to be the most beautiful journal anyone has ever had. So I spent a lot of money having it prepared and printed. And now I have a marketing problem. But so Like, I've got a whole palette of these in my garage. So if you know somebody who would love this journal, reach out. I can hook you up.
Yes, and we will be obviously linking your contact information so that people can reach out to you for that purpose. And one of the things that struck me as I've looked through it, and we've talked about this before, is that even though there is a subtitle on there that says a 6-month guided journal for grieving mothers, the different modalities and the steps that you take people through and the things to focus on and what we get reminded of in terms of getting through a grieving process are the same as getting through any healing process, right? So many of the things you just touched, in fact, all the things you just touched on, I've used myself in my own healing journey. And I'm not someone who is grieving the loss of a child, right? So it's universal. And so even though that subtitle is there, for any of you who are looking for a really beautiful journal to be able to write and document as you're going through the healing process, this is a great one. It really is beautiful.
Thank you. I'm really proud of it. I really, really am. It just, and the tabs, these big, beautiful purple and teal tabs and the colors and the, oh my gosh, I just, I love it so much.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
and
is. It is.
I love the affirmations that it has throughout the book
Yes,
too.
I do too.
It's okay
Yeah.
to let go of pain while keeping the love intact. And I try to think about things that, are hard for us. But to your point, yes, if you just want to cross out the four grieving mothers, you can absolutely, anyone can use this
And use
to
it.
help
Yeah,
them.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's what I noticed about it. And it also strikes me too, what a beautiful tribute to Catherine, right? That lives forever. A beautiful tribute to her starting there, right? So it's lovely.
thank you.
Really beautiful. Yeah, that makes me a little, I feel that. Yeah, so now I feel that because we hadn't talked about that before. So I feel that, right? When I hold this, right? It's a tribute to her. And that's amazing that you did that. That's very cool.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
been one of the main, and I named my publishing company after her. It's called Cat Biggie Press,
Yes.
and she stays forefront in all that I do. She's my North Star,
Yeah.
so it's really, really nice. I don't, I joke about, I mean, I can joke about it at this point in time, if anyone is currently going through a loss, I'm very, very sorry. And it's not a joking matter whatsoever. But I
Mm.
do tell people often, I'm like, man, for a baby that was only here for 2 days, she's had more impact than any other human on this earth. When you just take it down for the amount of time here versus what's come out of their life. So that makes me feel good. It makes me feel like
Yeah.
I've done right by her.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's the beauty of the tribute to her, right? But, and, it's interesting because I think about that, like why things in our life happens, right? And why a specific event, why we go through that. And you're a shining example of why that happened. And two souls that intersected for a brief moment in this lifetime in a physical form to be able to help so many others,
Yeah.
right? And that is so cool to me to think about things like that.
Yeah, I know. It was hard for me for a long time. My sister's very, very, very religious, and I will say that one of the things, if you've experienced someone in your life who's had a loss, do not, when it's fresh, say everything happens for a reason,
Oh,
because
yeah.
no one can wrap their head around that in that moment. And I had a few
Yes.
people tell me that, and even several years after the fact, my sister said, after I started the nonprofit and started doing these things, and I was having a bad day because, it never leaves you. Even now, after
Yeah.
13 years, something will happen, or I'll see a picture, or something will remind me, and I'll get emotional. But about 5 years ago, my sister said to me when I was like, I just don't understand why this happened. And she said, everything happens for a reason, and look what you've been able to do. Look how many people that you have helped and all of this. And it still rubbed me the wrong way. Even at that point, I was like, no, I would give it all up. I don't, this is
Yeah.
going to sound so wrong, but in the moment I was grieving and I was like, I don't care if I helped anybody else. I would trade
Yeah.
all of that to have my daughter here with me today. But now, and again, I published this journal on the 12th anniversary, and it was a beautiful day because she was born on 12/10, she died on 12/12, and I published this book on the 12th anniversary. So lots of 12s, and if
Wow.
you're a numerology person, you know that 12 is a very significant number. So it was very important to me, but it took to that point in time to realize my sister was right. And
Yes.
and now I embrace it in a little bit of a different way. I'm going to sound a little bit cuckoo here, but now I feel so empowered that I was, this sounds really weird. I'm not going to lie, that I was chosen. Like I was
No,
given
I'm
this purpose, and I try to live up to that every day.
Yeah, and I do believe that. I mean, in fact, I mean, I'm the same, right? I feel very empowered. That's why my book is called
Empowered
Becoming an Empowered
survivors. There you
Survivor, right? Because I feel I do become, but I've been through the same thing, and I think that's natural for all of us who have that pain in our life, that you do go through a period, and I don't think there's any amount of time that is the normal or right amount of time when you are saying, I would literally give up everything in my life to go back in the moment and not have that happen, right? I mean, me, I mean, I was, my journey began at the age of 5 when I was abused for the
go.
first time. And would I say to you right now, yes, I might go back and let that go and not have to go through that, because my
Right.
life for 50 years would have been entirely different.
Right.
But I also know that there's so much beauty in what I've been through and what I can do now and being able to help people. So I think that's natural in any, which, for me, the grieving process, I suppose, is a lot of it has been about my inner child and what I lost for
Hmm.
my entire childhood and much of my adulthood because of the way I was living. And I think that's natural for us to say, every one of us to say, I'd give up helping people if I didn't have to go through that. But yet, at the same time, I'm okay, and I've embraced, I've become empowered by my path to now be able to serve other people, which is the same place you're in. I think I think of other people that I know who have really public purposes where they're really trying to touch a lot of people, and it's coming out of this place of extreme
Yes.
loss and extreme
Yes.
grief, right? And I bet every single one of us would say the exact same thing, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's wonderful to help people, and it's given me a lot of purpose, but I would trade it all. I would trade it all.
Yes.
And but you don't know. It's like one of those things you wonder. It's like a movie, right? Where like when they say, "I wish I'd never met you." It's a Wonderful Life, like where you get a chance
Yeah.
to see what your life would have been like if you hadn't gone through those things, and all the people that you impacted, and all the things that would have been worse, and all of that. And it's like, all right,
Mm.
well, maybe there is a plan. I don't know. I'm very spiritual, not so much religious, but I do have to, like, what is there if there's not hope, right? So I have to
Oh,
hope that there is some plan to what we're going through, because right now we're all well, many of us are collectively grieving right now, but we could, yeah, this is a conversation we could have for days,
we
Beth.
could. We could. Yes, we could. But hope is hope is definitely part of keeping all of us going. I mean, it certainly is true for me. Hope is what keeps me going, even when the times get really difficult. Right? I know I'm going to be able to get through it now, and I know that there is a bigger purpose for what I'm going through. And I'm the same as you. I'm very spiritual, not particularly religious, but very spiritual. And I believe that about my soul, that I'm here to
Yeah.
do a particular job in this
Yeah.
lifetime. And part of my job was to go through my pain and my suffering. And I think that's really true for you as well. Um, does not negate the fact that I would go back and say, well, my life could have been easier for those 45 years, right?
Well, I tell you one of the positive things of it, and one of the things that I really wanted to come out of the journal, the reason I called it Permission to Thrive, is because two things can be true at the same time. You can still be sad for your loved one and be living a fulfilled life and be happy. And when you said that, it just made me think about the fact that, yes, bad things happened, but being able to pick yourself up and move forward and still carry the love, but not be stuck in that place.
Mm.
That's a real big part of my purpose right now, I think, is to help people realize that they don't have to stay stuck in that place. And it's heartbreaking. I know women who lost children around the same time that I did. And most of them are like me. They've moved on, they've accepted it, they remember the child on their birthday, or if other memories come up, they'll do that. But there's a handful that are still as angry and as sad as they were originally. And that's heartbreaking because now two lives, and how many other, like if you have other children, how does that impact the other children and all of those things? So I think that it's important that, I mean, you are empowered survivor, so I think this message lands quite well with you and your audience too. But it's like you can't roll over and also die. You have to get back up again. People rely on you. You rely on you. Like there's so much beauty in this life. And grieve, get it out, go through the process. Don't stuff it. Do what you need to do. Scream, kick the floor, lay down. I've had temper tantrums like a toddler, and that surprisingly, it just feels amazing. You feel a little silly when you get back up off the ground, but you also feel better. So, oh, I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but
Oh, no, it's beautiful what you're talking about. So it's not a tangent at all. And you should, on that note, one of the things that I experienced with the grieving process was having come through my own process. I had someone in my life a few years ago for a relatively short period of time, and someone who meant quite a lot to me. But because of his own illness, so he's a pretty severe alcoholic, I had to leave the relationship with him. And I went through something that I now understand to be what they called ambiguous loss, when you lose someone who's actually still alive, right?
yes.
And that has its own grieving process that goes along with that. And so I did grieve the loss of that person from my life. And I got to a place where I was like, I'm good. Like I'm felt good. I've grieved it. I'm past it. And then probably 6 months after I had come to that place, my aunt passed away, and she's actually the aunt that my book is dedicated to. And when she passed on, I had a huge sense of grief that came for her loss and just what her life had been. And she had never had the opportunity to go on a healing journey, and she suffered her entire life. And
Oh,
so I had immense grief for that, but it triggered the grief over the other person who I thought I had finished that grieving process. And it made me angry. I
yeah.
was like really mad. I was like, what is this? I'm done with it, right? I thought I was done with it, but not. So I feel like, grief is one of those things that even though we do heal enough to move past it to where we're functioning, it's not encumbering us to where we're non-functioning. I feel like it's not something that ever goes away. And I say this about my own trauma and abuse and surviving the way that I survived my life for so long. I've come a long way to heal past that to where I am thriving in my life. I have joy and I have love, but that is my past. It's never
Always there.
going it's
Right.
always going to be there.
Right.
We can't lose it. And so because of that, the reality of being triggered from time to time, it's going to happen.
Well, and events stack. Like you might think you're dealing with things, and what I've come to find out after a lot of therapy over the past 13
Me
years
too. Me too.
is that while I thought that I was doing so much good for myself by writing and by starting a nonprofit and by doing all these things for other people, in a way I was stuffing. I wasn't addressing my own pain. I was just putting a lot of things into my life to keep me so busy I didn't see it. And then so I had a decade of my dad had was very sick. He had dementia and kept having mini strokes and things. So we cared for him for the last 10 years before he finally passed away. And that was a very traumatic experience as we had to take over his life and do all of those types of things. Then one of my favorite aunts passed away after a very short battle with uterine cancer, and it was just she was 59. She was so young, and it was just like what?
Oh.
And I'd grown up with her, and then one of my best friends had ovarian cancer, and it came back, and she passed away. And then we have COVID, we have my divorce, all this stuff happening in one time frame, and you can't. It just stacks and it layers and it gets on top of it. I wound up in the hospital, and I don't know if that was if I mean I had a bad gallbladder, but who knows if it was because of all the things that that I wasn't dealing with well, and my body was finally like, this is it. Like we're you need to stop. You need to slow down. You need to figure this stuff out because you're not thriving. You're far from thriving. And let me show you how far from thriving you are.
That it's the same thing that I did. So for 45 years, as my trauma and abuse is layering, I'm literally building a wall around me. And part of that wall was just creating this life that was super busy
Yep.
and chaotic. I call myself a busyholic in chaos.
Uh,
And that's what I was my entire adulthood for
yep.
25, 30 years, probably 25 years until I started the healing journey. And that's what I now realize I was doing. I was just stuffing, right? And I recognize when I got to my turning point, my life altering event that sent me in a different direction, which I think we're going to come on to what that is for you. Maybe you've already just said it, but that's what I realized. I had just taken all of my trauma, all of my abuse, and all of my unprocessed emotions and shoved them into this massive wall that I lived behind. And found myself there alone and very lonely once it came time to go do my healing work and take that journey. So the body keeps score, right? You know that. We've all heard
Yes.
that as survivors. We've all heard that phrase in the great book that's out there on that topic. Do you think when your health, when you had the gallbladder issue and started to have the health challenges there, do you think maybe that was the turning point for you to say, all right, it's time to start dealing with this and to heal from the past?
It's interesting because I thought that I was already on my way. I thought that I
Hmm.
was already fairly well healed, but it was only, if I look back at it, it was only from I possibly had dealt with Catherine through my writing and through the company and through the
Hmm.
journal and all of these types of things, but I hadn't dealt with all the other things. And it was a really weird kind of turn of events. I had gone to the VA for a mammogram. And while I was there, I kept seeing posters all over the place for mental health programs for women who had military sexual trauma. And
Hmm.
this actually is the very first time that I'm sharing this story with anyone except for like
Oh,
about three people in my life who know this and all of
thank you.
the VA. But
Thank you.
like
Thank you for what you're about to say.
so, so I kept seeing these signs and these posters, and I was like, maybe I need to address, like, I'm like, I never dealt with, I was not raped, to be clear, but I did experience sexual assault, and I had never dealt with it. Only a few people knew about it. It was a really bad situation, and I was seeing all these posters and I decided that I was going to go ahead and call. And I wound up getting into the system. It took months and months and months and months before I finally got in there. But in the meantime, I had started dating a guy who served in the Marine Corps the same time I was in the Air Force. And we'd been rehashing a bunch of stories. And all of a sudden, the chaos in my life and the busyness, and then dealing with this issue that came back up again that I'd never really opened up about and now was talking about, and he validated me. All of a sudden, I started having panic attacks. I was so anxious all the time. I was really, 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 I was crying and I was like, what is happening? What is happening?
Mm.
And so I'm trying to deal with all of this stuff. And that's when I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, and thankfully was getting great mental health care through that way. But then I started having stomach pains and I went into the hospital, and they were like, "Oh, your gallbladder's got to go." So it wasn't even like we're going to schedule this. It was like we're admitting you to the hospital, and if we can get it out tonight, we will. But it wound up being the next day. It was a textbook surgery. Everything went well. It was with robotics. It was done laparoscopically. Like everything was great, but I was in a lot of pain. I went home. I continued to be in an immense amount of pain, and I started swelling. And I went back to the hospital. I called the doctor, and he was like, "That's not normal. You need to go back to the ER." So I go back to the ER, and I'm just going to condense a whole lot of stuff really quickly here. In a nutshell, they still have no idea. Spoiler alert, I have no idea what happened to me. There's a lot of theories, but over the next 5 days, I started gaining a tremendous amount of fluid. I just blew up like in a cartoon where somebody takes a
Oh,
water hose and it just whoop. I gained 40 pounds of fluid over about the course of under 2 weeks. And
oh my
a lot of it was
goodness.
initially like I and yes, it was crazy.
Oh,
And I was just immense. I was huge all over the place, and they could not I saw, I mean, the number of CT scans I had in the next couple of weeks. And so I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. And then I had to be at my mom's house for 3 weeks. By the time I got out of the hospital, I was still 40 pounds heavy with fluid. I had been on a lot of very heavy drugs,
mm,
medications, so I was very loopy. I'd lost all the muscles, so I couldn't change my clothes. I couldn't shower. I couldn't walk. I
mm,
had to have a
mm,
walker. I had to do physical
mm.
therapy 3 times a week. Like they came, and it was, I mean, it was a nightmare, and I was very close to dying. Actually, my kidneys started to shut down. My platelets started dropping. I had to have transfusions. Like it was, it was crazy. I mean, and for them to still have no answers is even wilder. And when you go through a moment like that, well, first of all, I thought I was having a psychotic break. This is where I might have realized where I wasn't totally healed with Catherine, because at one point in time, what I didn't tell you about her birth was that I did tell you that she had high drops. She had a lot of fluid built up in her body. So when she was born, her belly was just massive with fluid,
Mm.
and they had to drain fluid out of it. And that's what was happening with to me. Like my belly just got massive, and I kept telling the doctors, I was like, I was convinced. I was on a lot of medicine, a lot of drugs, but I was like, I'm being haunted. Like she's making me feel what she went through. Like I really, like, it all came back. I was like, I am living what she lived through. I'm feeling how awful it was. And they all looked at me like I was absolutely nuts, but I felt like that's what was happening to me. I was getting high drops. They couldn't stop the fluid buildup, just like with Catherine. They couldn't stop the fluid buildup, and there was no reason for it. And so I'm sure there is a reason for it, and if we were to dig deeper, probably somebody could find it. But it was wild. So it's a very long story. I apologize, but over the
No.
next 3 months, I could do nothing except for lay on the couch, get up every hour, and do my 250 steps, walk around the house a couple times. I had this little regiment of exercises I had to do while I was trying to just get stronger. I mean, I couldn't even get off the toilet by myself for quite some time. It was climbing the stairs up to my bedroom was an ordeal. It was wild, and took a long time for it to go away. And I've been on a lot of drugs, and we're experimenting with a lot of things because I'm still dealing with pain and other issues, brain fog. um, but it's through that process that all of a sudden I realized the obvious. When you go through a near death experience, the obvious is, life is short and we can't spend it doing things we don't, that make us unhappy, you know. But also just like this feeling that once again I was given a mission. And it's like, how do I make something from this? Well, how do I do something with this? So now it's quite confusing because I have to figure out, but it keeps coming back. I keep trying to leave the grief space. I keep trying to get away from it, and it keeps pulling me back in. And so I'm like, okay, I hear you. Like, how do I take this? What do I do? I'm really, really want to work with people who've gone through trauma, with veterans in particular. After seeing the way I got moved out of the VA, actually, one of the doctors there told my mom, you need to get her out of here or she's going to die. You need to take her someplace where they care for younger patients. And so my mom lobbied to get me transferred to the private hospital in town. And but I lived, I lived through what it was like to be one of those veterans in there, and I had people there battling for me. So not everyone was bad. I don't want to give. I had some wonderful, wonderful caregivers and wonderful medical professionals there, but the night shift was not so wonderful. And so like I don't know, Beth, it's like I just feel like I'm getting this download now back in my life again. But one of the things for me personally is that I have a lot to give to my children, to my friends, to my community, and I want to be a part of making things better. And so it feels like well, it's not a second chance. This is like a third, fourth. I don't know how many chances we've had here now, but yeah, I don't know. I don't want to keep rambling.
It's interesting. Just a few things that struck me as you were talking about that. So, first of all, what you experienced and your own feeling that you were living through what Catherine had gone through, right? And I do believe there is some reality to that, and maybe that was her spirit speaking to you to remind you or to say, "Hey, there's stuff you still need to deal with," or to guide you on your purpose as an angel, right? I do believe that there's some reality to that, and you might even have your own inner knowing about that, right? Which is why you talk about it. And, to people who aren't particularly spiritual, might not believe that our lives are being led, I
Hmm.
believe, by a group, right? I believe it's a group of beings out there and angels, if you want to call them angels, that are guiding my life, and that's probably true for you. And I think she's
Oh,
probably one of those for
yes,
you,
I
right? You
agree.
know that,
Shoot, with
which
all
is
the things that
beautiful.
I've been saved from, there's got to be at least 15, 20 people who are
Of
surrounding
course,
me.
of course.
They're like,
Yeah,
Alexa, will you please stop this?
yeah.
Like, we're getting tired.
Well, so it's funny you say that because I also believe that the things that we go through in our life when they build and they keep sort of repeating, they're similar, not quite the same, but we find our place back in a we need to heal. We find our coming back to that place. I feel like for many of us, including me, I experience this where that just keeps layering because those spirits are trying to get your attention to say, hey, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And for many of us, there is a bigger purpose and something that we're supposed to be doing that's directly related to that. And so if you're off course, you haven't done the work you need to do, you're off course, and you're designed for that purpose, I do believe that we keep getting they're not gentle reminders, right? I mean, you sort of feel like you're getting knocked around and beat over the head at some point, right? But I do believe that about each one of us.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's what you have been experiencing, and this is your opportunity to really dig down and spend the time to really get that download, right? And I do that. I've had that same experience, and I seek that download every day. So in fact, before we came onto this show, and this morning when I was getting dressed, I was seeking that download that whatever the message was that was supposed to come from our conversation today would reveal itself and it would be here. And I feel like it is very much
I
that
was gonna
this is the
say
conversation we're supposed to be having.
absolutely. Well, when it comes out naturally, that's that you know you're on the right path, right?
Yes.
But it's like there's so much suffering. There's so much
Mm,
Beth, this is so weird. Like I've always felt
mm,
like I am on this path for something and like I've been given I don't even know how to say this without just sounding cuckoo cuckoo, but but I've been given the skill set to be the right person to help a lot of people because I always fall smack in the middle. Like I lost a child, but I got to bring one home with me, right? I experienced an MST, but it wasn't all the way. I'm always like right down the middle of everything so that I can see both sides, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. Like I know both sides of the story. And I remember this one time I was blogging, and I was trying to, at the time it was 2012, and the rise of the mom blogger was full blown at that point in time. Everybody's trying to, that was, we mom bloggers started the influence community. I just want to say influencers started with mom bloggers. Somebody will probably correct me on that, but I'm gonna say it anyway. And I'm trying to like grow this blog and everything. And there was this woman who was just a huge hit, and she was coaching people on how to write stories that are huge hits on their blogs or whatever. And I sent her one of my essays for a review, and she said, "Here's the problem. You're on the fence. You've got to pick a side." She's like, when you're right down the middle, like you're not getting anybody riled up because and yeah, you're not shaking your head. But I took that advice and I tried to, and it's so not me. I don't like, I have very strong, I know which side of the fence I'm on every single issue, but I
mm,
also know, I come from a family where it's divided between a lot of liberals and a lot of really conservative people. So I'm always, everything in my life, I'm always right there in the middle, and
mm.
I can see both sides. And I think that might be like my gift.
Yeah.
I don't know how to always I don't know how always to find it except for leading by example. So in showing how I'm healing and showing how I'm processing and creating books and products and teaching people how to write to heal, in helping people share their big stories and have an impact on the world. Like I guess I kept trying to say that wasn't big enough. That wasn't it. That couldn't be the thing. But you asked me what or you alluded to what came out of it, and maybe that's what's come out of it, is that
Mm.
that is enough. It's more than enough, because look what writing has done to help me heal. So if that's a gift you can give other people by showing them the path, be it through writing or traveling or um, living life to its fullest, whichever path it is that people are seeing me do. Does that make sense?
100%. It does, 100%. Because I've had to go through the same process, right? To look at the gifts and where am I? And, I mean, one of the gifts in my life, and I'll just, it's kind of a weird gift, but I'm just going to say this. So, the sexual abuse I experienced when I was 5 is familial. So it was my grandfather,
Oh,
and it's my dad's father.
oh,
And my dad grew up in a household that was really, really difficult for many, many reasons, right? And the aunt that I dedicated the book to is his sister, and she suffered a great deal at the hands of her father. And my father suffered too, right, in a
oh,
different way. But one of the greatest gifts that my father never that my father did give to me was that he never sexually abused me, right?
mm,
And it's a weird thing to say about a gift, but I think about it, it is a gift, because had that continued down the line, because it is generational, had my dad done that to me, my life would have been wildly different. And so I'm like, so I'm close enough to the child sexual abuse, to have experienced it and to know what it did to me in my life, and how a single experience literally altered the trajectory of my life and sent me in a different path. But it didn't compound and get even worse because I didn't experience that with my father, right?
Right.
And so that is a gift. So I
Yes.
completely understand what you're saying about you're there. I mean, you've experienced it, but not in the extreme way that I believe that would have prevented me from doing the work that I'm doing now.
Yes, that's a
Because
great point.
I look at my aunt's life. She's the comparison for me, right? And I look at she suffered her entire life, and I have not experienced. I suffered for my life for many, many years, 45 years after that, but not in the same way that she did because I feel like it had just impacted her in a much different way, and I didn't have that passed on to me where it was my father doing that, right? And so to me, that's a blessing. It's a gift. It's huge.
Yeah.
And it's part of what now allows me to be able to do what I'm doing, and so, trying to find that path. I don't know if we talked before. There's a great book out there called The Second Mountain by David Brooks.
Oh.
And if you haven't read that book, it's a really great book because it helped me to understand the journey to getting to what is effectively for me literally is a second mountain. I don't know that it would be as much of a second mountain for you because second mountain for most people is like radically different. You go from a place of a job where you're serving pretty much self and doing the same thing as I like to say, keeping up with the Joneses, because I am a Jones, which is kind of a joke. Because we're not keeping up with this Jones or my family, because it's not that kind of stuff. But, where you climb the corporate ladder and titles and, all that kind of stuff that comes along with it. Second Mountain, you're in service, fully in service to communities and to other people in whatever aspect of your life has moved you in that direction, right? And that book was very profound for me in finding my way to where I am now and helping me to understand really the dichotomy of my life. Right? And I think that's kind of what you've experienced too, right? A lot of dichotomy in your life, and then you find yourself in this place where you're like, okay, I clearly have some gifts here. What am I meant to be doing with those? And I think that's absolutely true for all of us, particularly those of us who suffer and then are given the opportunity to heal. And
Mhm.
I see it more and more and more in the circles that I run in now, where I can just see that for people. I understand the suffering you've been through enough in talking with you to say, okay, this probably is what your path is and what you're meant to be doing with that. So, in that vein, I think we're all alike, right? And it's just for each one of us to find what is that place, what is our purpose, right? And I know you've been doing it for a while, and I think what you're talking about is that refinement, which is something that I'm also working through, right? So how do I want to continue to engage with people, right? And it's just a journey we all have to go on as part of the healing process.
It is, and I'm looking for a way to bring it all together. Like that's the part where I'm at
Mm,
right now. One of the things that I've had on my heart for a long time is starting like a healing farm. Um,
mm.
or retreat center, something like that, and where I could bring all of these things together. People could come in, and but I mean that's whew, that's a heavy endeavor. So now I'm thinking about maybe just adding retreats to my existing stuff, and then people like make them. I don't know. There's so many ideas. I was like, I need to be 7 people. How am I going to do all these
Oh,
things?
well, on that retreat notion that you're talking about, that is definitely a separate conversation for us to have off of this recording for the show. So, um, I will definitely reach out to you on that.
Excellent,
We'll, we'll
excellent.
we'll chat about it. We'll chat about it some more. So we're coming near the end of the show. So tell us, what is it that you are focusing on right now? So in your work today, what really lights you up right now?
I would say I really love giving the tools for other people to make their own path. If I were to boil it down, that's what it really is. And this just came to me. But that's what I do is I teach people about the things that I have done to get where I am, and I provide them the tools or the people or the connections. Community building. Community
Hmm.
building is where it's at for me, whether it's for grieving mothers, whether it's for women who are writing, whether it's for the publishing industry. It's all about building community, because at the root of everything, I did not get here alone. I got here with lots of other women, some men, but mostly with a lot of women who were on similar paths, journeys, and supported me and helped me throughout the way. And it's important for me to always remember that and to give that back.
I love that. It's exactly the place that I'm in. I did not heal on my own. And I went through a sort of a different process than what gets written about, but it's a real process, right? We have our lived experiences that we go through, which I think have a lot of commonalities. But what we talk about and tell people about is much different from what you read about in a lot of the books that are out there.
Yes.
And so I think we're all here doing the same thing for the purpose of healing humanity broadly, is what I think we're meant to be doing, right? Collectively, together, and as community to help each other. Right? So
Yes.
you and I are definitely on a very, very similar path. I might even go so far as to say the same path, just with different nuances to it.
Right. Well,
Um,
it was so great that April connected us.
Yes, yes, it is. So yeah, I've really enjoyed our chat today. And as I told you, I did. I did. I asked the universe. I was like, whatever message is supposed to come in this conversation today, let it be there. And we've had a great conversation.
Oh,
It's
this
been
has been
wonderful.
fantastic. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah. It really has been. So, and I'm very happy to have had you on, and I look forward to connecting with you more and maybe even working with you.
Same. Let's do it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. All right, everyone, that wraps up our show for today. And you will find all of the things that we've talked about on this show in terms of resources and being able to connect with Alexa in the show notes. So please take a look at those. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode of Let's Heal with Beth Jones. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Beth Jones Healing Mentor. And if you'd like to know more about me and my work to help other survivors to heal, please visit me on the web at empoweredsurvivors.com.